Yeah, I'm here with Stephen Brett. Many of you will know him as a member of the Mojo Fins, Brighton mainstay for many years, released a number of critically acclaimed albums. The Mojo Fins is no more, is that right? Or
No,
is it on long-term hiatus?
No, I think it's definitely, it came to an end in 2014. So
Yeah.
And by largely mutual consent, I think I can afford myself a bit of pride looking back now. That wasn't always afforded when you're kind of in the midst of it all. But
No. Yeah, I mean, it was a big thing for you, wasn't it? It was a band with a lot of ambition, and you did a lot, But as you say, it's at least you've got that legacy, haven't you? You got that. You got that repertoire and that catalogue that you can say, "Yeah, I did that. Totally. That was me."
And maybe infuriatingly for some people, perhaps I wasn't. I guess I was ambitious, but I never really. I always worked outside of music and worked in quite challenging environments outside of music, and that always ran in tandem. And I think the fact that we released records and were played on radio around the world and Glastonbury, and there were lots of real highlights, and going to Rockfield 4 or 5 times.
Really? 4 or 5 times? Yeah. The legendary Rockfield Studios in Wales,
Yeah, all of that kind of...
Bohemian Rhapsody and Black Sabbath. And
exactly, we used that very piano that apparently was the Bosendorfer, Freddie himself played on. So I mean, I think we had a nice run.
You've got an EP coming out quite soon. Things Have Changed, written by yourself, and also features Paul Pascoe on bass. Paul Pascoe runs the Church Road Studios in Hove, which is quite a well-known local studio, and Charlotte Glasson is involved, multi-instrumentalist. A lot of people know her in this area, the Brighton area, but of particular note is that she's been working with Nick Cave quite a lot in the last few years, on and off, here and there. And then Nick Van Vlanderen, is that how you say his name?
I always mispronounce the name. Nick insists on just calling him Nick VV.
Yeah.
But I think I'll make an attempt. I think it's Von Vlanderen.
Okay, all right.
And I probably messed up.
He's on drums.
He's on drums. He's extraordinary.
Yeah.
As is Charlotte. Probably easier to list the instruments that Charlotte doesn't play. Yeah, it was really lovely to finally do something together.
So tell me about this then. Tell me about the EP. What obviously you love writing, don't you? Music is something that you've always liked doing. Mm-hmm. And you obviously got this need to do it, this passion, fitting in with your work commitments and so forth. But tell me about this, and maybe how maybe working with the Mojo Fins and other projects has kind of informed where you are now.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say, that songwriting just kind of is still very much part of my life, as it was back in the period where we had a band. And then I suppose post 2014 and our disbandment, I just continued to write. So probably amassed about 30 songs a year since then, and they're all kind of sat in notebooks and boxes on shelves. And but essentially I stopped playing live and worked my way back slowly and did a bit of work at Church Road, met Paul, as you mentioned. But then I think also started to say yes to some other things as well. I think one of the brilliant things about the Mojo Fins was that we all pretty much grew up together, and I think that's something quite potent about that, but it can become very insular as well. So it was always probably just the 4 of us. And my good friend John included before his untimely passing. So I said yes to being a guitar player for a bit as well, and hadn't really thought I'd go back to kind of live singing and fronting something. But I joined Paul's band Beat Hotel on guitar, which was great fun and continues to be. And we released a record with Beat Hotel, so that's Paul's band with his long-term friend Arash Tarabi. That's kind of the nucleus of the band, really. But that was great fun. Dave Morgan plays drums. Some people will know Dave from the Weather Prophets
yeah.
and a Loft,
Yeah.
and he played on Sonic Flower Groove, the first Primals record.
Okay.
Really legendary, lovely person. So that just ultimate fun, really, and very low pressure for me. It just sort of stood in the shadows, playing lead guitar. And then that kind of led into doing a little bit of a duo thing with Paul, where I did start singing live again at our friend's night, Bleeding Hearts Club, which is on hiatus. But
Chris Davies,
right? And my good friend Davey Pinnington, who has an extraordinary record waiting in the wings. I think that's out in March. And then I suppose things kind of coalesced around a live band then, and some of the songs I'd amassed kind of worked their way into the band that you mentioned previously with Nick and Odder and Paul on bass. And then I got reacquainted with Tom from Electric Soft Parade and got asked to join Electric Soft Parade live band, that particular iteration, around that extraordinary record of theirs, Stages. The plan had been to tour that, and we had dates in France and UK booked, and that was just as we went into lockdown. So that's kind of a bit of a pen picture really of where I've been at. That didn't come to pass, unfortunately. I hope they do get back to playing that record live. It really is.
It's great.
An extraordinary piece of art, life affirming. I also had the good fortune then to meet Robert White, who was playing bass in that iteration of the live Soft Parade band, and he's become a really, really good friend. I love him dearly, and he kind of convinced me to send some bits and pieces that I had been working on to him, all of which are really kind of folk finger-picked songs, and we've ended up sort of starting a record together.
Okay. Yeah.
Which one of those tracks may or may not be aired for the first time on this show. So that's kind of that, and then the EP really stems from SJ Brett live band.
So Robert White, just for those who don't know, is has been making music for a long time and has been in some notable bands, including
Levitation, and then Milk and Honey Band.
And the Milk and Honey
Band,
Band,
songwriter and singer and polymath of them. And that record, Songs from Truly Hill,
which is his recent one.
Yeah, the most recent one really had a massive impact on me, and continues to. So
he's just another consummate songwriter, isn't he?
He's amazing. Absolutely.
Writes lovely songs all
he really
the time.
Does. really deeply affecting stuff, and so that's kind of what I've been doing of late, and that's just a really lovely slow burn project that we return to. So I really hope that record will come out.
So what is folk music to you then?
Goodness. It's quite a broad term. I mean, only in the sense that I sort of ascribe that to this project because it is essentially based around one guitar. Often finger picked. So I guess it has that kind of association with more English pastoral stuff. My voice. And Robert's kind of added some really minimalistic but melodic and beautiful piano. But the EP really sort of draws on those boxes of songs, really. And it's great that it's coming out. I believe it's out on the 25th of March.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be the first release, really, for me since Mojo Fins, and it's strange in a sense because the songs are some of them quite old, but there'll be 3 tracks on that EP. 4th track, there's an extended mix of things have changed, but I think it kind of hangs together pretty well. I mean, I think it sort of concerns itself with notions of displacement and identity and alienation.
The first song, Things Have Changed, you've got 2 versions of that, radio edit and a full version.
But I think that particular song, I think its heart and soul really, if I can be so grand, it concerns my parents and their displacement from Belfast in 1972 and coming to Brighton, without putting too much emphasis on their experience, but it's important for me that in terms of my own identity to acknowledge the fact that they left because they had to. Like many people. And I suppose growing up in Brighton, the 4 of us, my brother Patrick included, we were connected to the Irish community, but I think there was always that thing of vague outsider status and trying to reconcile that, and with a family that were across the water, and a hankering, I suppose, to go back, which I did in the end. I went back in my late teens. So their experience is very much within that song, and I suppose there's references to my son, who I took back there about 5 years ago. It really was influenced by that. So their displacement, my own self-identity, which is weird because it's sort of kind of culturally writ quite large at the moment, even though the song 2 years old. They went to see the film Belfast. I think really deeply affecting for them. So really that song kicks it off, and I think thematically the next two songs touch on similar themes, albeit concerning different people or different ideas.
So the next song is called Fear Factory, and there are actually, with Fear Factory and Your Little England, actually I do sense there's a little bit of folkiness actually in those songs.
Your Little England, again, really stripped back, so it's essentially an acoustic, a bass, and Charlotte plays some flute and violin on that particular song. And that particular song definitely influenced by two very dear friends in particular, and I think it's funny because it feels like it was written post-Brexit almost immediately. I don't know whether it's got relevance now. I guess it probably does, because we're still in the midst of what that means, I think, in many respects.
Yeah.
But really the themes are their experience of post-Brexit limbo. They're no longer in Brighton, actually. They've been here for 20 plus years. They now live in Bavaria. And
they decided to leave because of
that
England,
limbo.
UK left.
And I think that limbo that lots of EU citizens or UK nationals, European heritage, felt at that time. And so it's their experience within that song, and I think it's the book. There's a book called In Limbo, so Brexit testimonies from EU citizens. It's by Elena Remigi, well worth one of the people who I kind of reference the experience in the song, helped edit that particular book. But I think there's sort of touchstones in there. It references the Powell River of Blood speech. It's also really influenced by some of the journalism that occurred pre and post Brexit, particularly that of Fintan O'Toole, a writer of some extreme talent, and his book Heroic Failure: Brexit and the Politics of Pain. And just that he sort of he puts over an argument that there was probably a sizable amount of people that voted for Brexit that did so with ties to this cult of heroic failure that the Anglosphere allowed for, and these kind of notions of self-pity as well. He positions self-pity as a pleasurable experience, one in which we all go through, essentially predicated on this idea that we feel it because we're not given what we deserve. And I think a lot of people possibly felt that post Second World War. We didn't get the spoils and the riches that we did through that suffering. Hopefully it ties together those things. I mean, it's all very grandiose, and I don't pretend to know the arguments for or against in an economic sense.
No.
At all.
I don't think any of us know, do we?
Exactly. I mean, the stuff I would read would suggest maybe fisheries and agriculture. Have you
ever tried to understand the fishing industry? Or it's like more complex than nuclear physics.
I've fished in my life, but not on a farming level or had to rely on it as an income. But it feels like the promised land. Yeah, I don't understand the economic arguments about it, but that song really is about the experience of two very dear people. Again, thematics of displacement.
Can I mention one of these people? I mean, one of them is Adam.
Well, actually, why not?
Mojo Fins.
So Adam and his wife Pia. So, they are the people of which that's what that song really concerns itself with, and they were the first people I played it to. But I think it's about the sociological and psychological impact of something. Yeah. And I wouldn't, I don't want to get preachy.
No.
But that I felt compelled to write something.
Of course, it's a big thing for a lot of us.
Yeah.
For everybody, and particularly for those who felt strong ties. Our neighbours, our cousins, and so forth. And even just in simple terms like music, you can see how that's had a massive effect on a lot of lesser known musicians or lesser resourced who are struggling to do make a living because
Yeah.
they can't travel to Europe so easily, or there's so many bureaucratic issues associated with it.
Well, I think the arts is always the last thing that gets thought about. I mean, let's be honest, I think it's been absolutely disastrous
Yeah.
on that level alone. And I know, lots of touring musicians that have had that made it so much harder. But then, of course, we went into the pandemic, and I think that's been masking.
That's obscuring,
I think it has obscured quite a lot of stuff.
There's a lot to still play out. And then the other song is Fear Factory.
It's important to, I suppose, spell out the fact that I'm responsible for delivering services to Rough Sleepers in the city.
Yeah.
Have been for 21 years now, which has always run in tandem. There's a lot of themes in this particular song about psychohistory of the Tory party and its ties to Eton and the one-upmanship and the lack of nuance in debate, which weirdly I think has only been amplified through recent times, filtered through a sort of Trumpian influence of debate. But really around the DWP cuts that occurred under a Cameron government, the real life impact that I noticed for my service users, etc., people I know. But this sort of like frustration about the constant massaging of that impact really through overly worded rhetoric, and I suppose at the risk of sounding like an A-level sociology student. I was one at one point a long time ago, so I can own that. But this kind of like need for continual fragmentation, and so maybe cack-handed, maybe not, but that's where that song sits. And musically, it's kind of interesting because I think that's where Charlotte really comes. Her playing on that track, particularly, I really I adore.
Are you thinking about performing live at any point?
I mean, I'd really love to return to the live band setup. It would be really lovely. Charlotte's throwing her hat into the ring. Yeah. So that would be great, to hear those songs live with her input. And then the folk stuff, I mean, conceivably, I could just do that with a guitar. You never know. So.
Thank you for taking the time, and well done, and really enjoyed hearing that EP, and I'm looking forward to hearing the new project as well with Robert soon, hopefully. Okay. Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jeff.